the economic war needs to be won, so we are strong when a real war also happens, right? And that's such a massive entity in the US that is then backing something like this. Like, it's if that ever happened with a stock, that stock would like 500% in a day. And it's just, I'm just so amazed that all these massive things don't impact Bitcoin directly. But that's why I feel it eventually will go like crazy. But Gregory, I see you on mute, and that's perfect timing because I actually just wanted to ask you. You've been in the financial industry for a long time. I mean, what is your idea on this? Why is it there's so much bullish news? Why is it not pushing Bitcoin like crazy?
Actually, yeah. So altogether, I'm bullish on Bitcoin. Actually, I was bullish back in my central banking time, and just funny to say that I think 8 years ago or 9 years ago, I just came up with the idea that in the reserve, in the FX reserve at the central bank, I said, why don't we hold some Bitcoin, just a minimal? And then I was cursed at that back at that time. So more on NFT technology that you can use. There are much more use cases where you can utilize it, and indeed for community engagement, uh, um, that's gonna be a NFTs or NFT technology will have a pivotal role. Um, that's my belief, and that's our obviously that's why we are focusing on, and we are working on in the background. We are working on interesting use cases
Mm.
where how we can use NFT technology on the traditional NFTs. Yeah, I mean, it's eventually in the background we see some new collections are actually working on some people, some communities on new collection. It's pretty exciting. I'm looking forward, and I hope it will uh, work out. But I think altogether, what's important on the NFT part is the utility natures, to have utilities and to have real community engagement. And if this happening and the speculative part is reducing, so that will work out.
Yeah. No, absolutely. SMS, you have any take on this or anything to add to what Gregory was saying?
I mean, I think it's showing that it's not all a scam. Is one of the bigger things to see. You see the doodles with McDonald's. You see the Popkins making their partnership with the gaming. You're starting to see more and more of bigger names actually being taken seriously as far as this. And you're going to see. I mean, these things take time. We were expecting this stuff because a Web3 minute or whatever feels like a week and a half, like just the speed of things. So we
Mhm.
wanted things to be overnight. But reality is you needed to have them built, break, rebuilt. And we went through a very turbulent time as far as the market. So money wasn't flowing the same way. So the people that were making the right things, they weren't launching tokens. They were developing on the back end and finding a way to make this real. And I mean, even with Pudgy Penguins being a huge play, putting plushies in Walmart, putting them where people are like, oh, that's cute, and they're seeing that using social media for engagement is what makes this the cultural thing. That's where the fun and the meme coins, and that's why the PFP stays on, because there's people that recognize these things and they relate more to that. And me being a creator, like I've always been doxxed. I never was one to want to hide anything like that. So it's not one of those things for the anonymous. It's for representing, like, hey, I'm an artist as well, so it's like I wanted to see this succeed, and if I'm going to try to make a voice or any takes where it's going to be taken seriously, that's where there's a fine line on that. You said earlier, the professional and the serious part of it versus like let's have fun, and you can see where that transfers over, like Happy Meals and stuff like that. You put like a cute little character on there. People ask, what is that? They want to get involved. The D app, gets into play. You download this thing from McDonald's or whatever, and now you're essentially tapping into the NFT side of things. And I think one of the biggest things is the gaming. And I've been working with DD Gaming. That was a call that actually had to tell him I'll speak with him later regarding this. But taking NFTs and finding a way where you don't have to trade the NFT, but you can hold it again as the store of value, where there's residuals, where there's things that come with holding on to them. The Pudgy Penguins get airdrops, and the Moonbirds, them being picked up and the price running up. You'll have that investment kick, but then what are they doing with this going forward? The gaming side of it comes back into play, and that's one of the biggest marketing things that every single blockchain I've talked with, even say one of their biggest pushes is gaming, because that draws people in on a level where you don't have to say NFT, crypto, meme coin. All of that is null and void. But you can still use the technology, like Gergely's saying right there. Like there are certain things that the skins, the items, the tools. Bonk released one of their games, and you use the bonk, it burns it. It does a buyback mechanism. So there's other things that these tools that we're developing over time are just going to be refined and get better and better. And the stuff that's not going to last, it'll fall off quick. We don't stick around for the bullshit here in this space, which is
Yeah,
funny.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
just an
No, very true.
interesting thing on the part, because I agree, gaming is a huge possibility here, and in Web3 in general. But just a recent experience, I was talking with with a gaming company, quite a reputable one, and they like the technology. They could imagine as a community engagement layer, let's say, for the gaming. But they said that don't call it NFT because that's in a gaming is a gaming industry. I mean, I'm Web3 gaming, but in general in gaming industry, it's a very bad reputation. It's a curse word.
Yeah,
So
they
this
think of
was
it like scammy instantly. They're like, "Nah, get that stuff out of here." So you got a digital asset or collectible or is something like you have to change the vocabulary up because they're not buying it.
Fair enough. In the meantime, I was checking out some of the stats that we discussed earlier today during the space. Since we
Which
started,
stats did you check?
well, the Bitcoin price it's up almost $700 since we started the space. It's actually
what really matters here is one thing for sure is the regulatory aspects. So there is more and more pro crypto regulation, and that really matters. I'm coming from the regulatory side, and I know that what's the sense of the regulation? It matters. And yeah, just example, for instance, that every year they ask U.S. asset management companies that, and there is a chapter for subchapter for crypto, and they always mention the regulatory uncertainty as a major thing that they are not holding more or they are not holding at all. And for other than Bitcoin and for Bitcoin, what it really matters that for other than Bitcoin is, I guess, that the share of institutional investors or for any kind compared to the share of retail, because on the retail side, you everybody's experiencing there is quite a high volatility, quite a high FOMO volatility. You mentioned crypto casino, and but if you have more and more institutional investors, uh, their hands are not shaking there. They're taking more long-term view. They're analyzing more the situations, so that can help a lot.
Yeah, I can fully agree with that. Actually, I think indeed the whole direction we go, right. It's not just in the U.S. It's actually also in Europe with Mika that they're pushing a lot on regulatory. There was a whole article this week about how Europe is gearing up for DeFi regulatory in 2026. I mean, they're a bit slow, but it's coming in place, right? And I think that's one of the key things also. I mean, one of the things I wanted to add to what I was just saying about the Bitcoin price is also that Tesla just the market opened went up 5% in the first second. Um, Probably will recover to where it was yesterday after the shenanigans. So I think it's an interesting push. But yeah, I agree with what you were saying, Gregory. Now, something
Don't
completely different
forget
that
in
I saw.
Tesla that many people didn't buy Tesla in Europe. They stopped buying Teslas because of the political views of Musk, and
Yeah.
so it's uh, there are more angles of this story for sure, and not everything is negative for the Tesla price.
No, that's true. I mean, if I think one of these things is what is interesting to know that I'm trying to quickly search it to find the results, but um, now this is the US market. So in the first 3 months of this year, they almost sold the same amount of Teslas in the US as in the entirety of 2022 in Europe. So it's like, this big news, like Europeans are not buying Tesla. It's like, yeah, they weren't buying that many compared to other places in the world already.
Mm.
And I think the one thing Tesla still is going for it in Europe is that a lot of the Chinese brands are being blocked out. There's only one or two that are actually being admitted here. and are for sale. But once that flux the market, uh, it's gonna be over for Tesla here. But that, I think it was never really their market to begin with, right?
Honestly, I'm not sure. I was just thinking about something else because what I heard a couple of times, but also again, that could be like kind of biased, is that a lot of companies, because I don't know if it's the same in the US, but at least in Europe, you have a shitload of company cars, right? So people basically get cars from their companies free for use. And this is typically purchased by the companies via long-term contracts, right? So they would exchange them every 2-3 years or something. And a lot of the companies actually in Europe already said apparently that they were not going to repurchase Teslas for their employees. And these, if that is actually of effect, right? So I don't know that, but this would only come in play at a later point in time. These effects aren't visible right now.
Yeah, and then of course at the same time, if Musk does something crazy with a new rocket or something, they're all back to loving him again.
Mm.
So fascinating, and it just drives. It's one of these conversations we have a lot. I think we talk a lot about it on our deep in AI spaces, but Amazon actually announced a $10 billion US investment, obviously to help the whole regulation stuff around Trump. But they're going to advance AI innovation. Now, talking about AI, right? They also made a statement later on that they are testing in the US right now with humanoid robots for deliveries. Now, obviously, it sounds very sci-fi, right? Humanoids that are delivering packages, and there was this thing with drones, but it never really took off. Like, how likely is it that delivery people, delivery men, delivery women, whatever you want to call them, will be replaced by humanoids in the next 5 years? Like, what do you guys think? Because I'm pretty bullish on the fact that that's going to happen in almost every manual labor um what do you say, like industry, let's call it that. But what do you guys think? Dominic, maybe you can go first.
Yeah, I'm not sure if delivery would actually be the first kind of adoption area, or one of the first. Could like just think about it now, right? Obviously, I never thought about that before. I do see that there is a lot of, let's say, variables when it comes to deliveries, right? It's you would have to probably go through traffic or something, or maneuver through the city. You would have to be able to kind of have a certain mechanism or something on where you would actually deliver the package, right? Can you leave it in front of the door? Do you have to ring a doorbell? Do you have to deliver it to some sort of a hub or something where people would then pick it up themselves? Like all these kind of things. So the way that I see delivery drivers or workers work right now, I think for me it's tough to imagine if you give it different, let's say, circumstances, right? So if you define that it would always be delivered to a delivery hub, and you have those decentralized delivery hubs set up in spaces basically everywhere in a city, and people would just pick them up themselves in a vicinity close to where they live. This would, I don't know, not the last mile, but the last 5 mile solution or something like that. But I actually think it's probably going to be in different areas first. I don't think that this is something that it wouldn't be that public of a level, right? More on a let's say more closed environment, which is not that publicly visible. I could imagine, but seriously, could be very wrong here.
No, I think I think it's interesting. I mean, I think with, for example, Aoki, right, where we talk to like getting spatial awareness built into AI chips that will go into these humanoids, making them able to go anywhere, everywhere, basically.
Mhm.
Like that approach, I think, is very interesting and way closer than we think. Make them real, real, have them the real capabilities to actually do what a human is doing when it comes to executing, and not just do, hey, I'm a robot, I go from A to B and I do my job,
Yeah.
right? But SMS, you raised your hand when Dominic was talking. I'd love to hear your thought on this.
Yeah, so I worked in construction for about 16, 17 years doing commercial construction on like big scale skyrise buildings, putting the glass in. So everything that I've done, we found some way to use like some kind of mechanic or robotic way for assistance, whether it's a vacuum cup to hold the glass or whether it's, a hydraulic lift to, pick up things to a certain level. So there needs to be a human element because of the danger that is inherently in there, but there's points where I think having a robotic thing that's going to like load and unload trucks, that's going to be one of the more convenient ways. That becomes an efficient way to do so. There's certain things where you have to be super technical and a human has to like guide it. So like you'll have to control that kind of robot. But as far as delivery, they've been testing out for the last, I guess, 4 or 5 years to, autonomous like Uber drivers and stuff like that out in LA, for instance. So the
Mhm.
success with that, you don't necessarily need the humanoid robot, but to the effect of what Dominic, like, I think, was saying, like they need like a central place to go. They just need it programmed and paid for as a service because it's already happening, and there's nobody driving the car. You just hop in and plug in
Mm,
where you're going, and that's already there. So if you put
mm, mm,
a robot that's able to, I guess, get your package and stuff like that, like I think it becomes a, where do you remove the middleman where the human needs to do the mindless job? Like that's one of the things. I've actually worked inside of an Amazon and saw the robots for the floor, and I got to help work with them as far as getting them back on track. But they do all of the moving around for the heavy stuff. You have to go in there to stock certain things and put them in these very intricate little ways to make sure that this thing works. But the robots are going to be taking over certain things to an effect that it does reduce the worker, but you're going to create more work. Somebody that needs to pick up the broken ones or fill the batteries or change the cables, or the work changes from as much manual labor to more like input, where you're going to have to
mm,
put data in and you're going to have to maintain these levels and stuff like that. So the labor is going to also, I think, be the exo side of it, where like it's a like maybe you're holding or stepping into this thing that it doesn't use your back muscles. It assists with that. Like, so for
mm,
an e-bike, you have pedal assisting. Like your battery lasts like probably twice as long if you use pedal assist with an e-bike as it is, and it goes just as fast as if you're cranking, the throttle essentially. So if you were to think about how do you relate this to construction, so like if your backs are hurting, if people that get on their hands and knees, like, well, if they create something where if you're doing tile, you're bent over, you're hunched over the whole time. Well, if you create something that supports your chest, your weight, and you seamlessly can roll around, you know what I mean? That removes the injury, the risk, and all of that. So, like, yeah, you kind of have a robotic assistance in that, but you still need the person to put the cuts in, to look at the floor and lay it out. Unless it's, again, you go commercial, you can almost plug and play like Legos. It's just going to take a level of connects and that kind of fun building and engineering for it to work. But it's the loading, unloading. It's the labor intensive like that. It's not going to be your jobs removed. It's parts of your job are going to be removed, and that's where you're going to see. I honestly think that it's going to increase the level of understanding with tech in general, like outside of crypto, 100%. Like I think people will have to learn, this is where things are going, and this is where companies are going to pay for it.
mm.
If they can remove the person, yeah, but there's still an element of that's going to need to be there. And I think again, like the unloading, loading, the worker part of that is one of the easiest ways to make things more efficient and uh, you know applicable.
Yeah, no, I think so as well. I mean, if you think about it logically, right? It's the whole cycle. It's from creating the product where robots are used to putting that into a truck, the truck driving automatically to the location where it needs to be, where it's being emptied by another set of robots, where it's all of these things are not that difficult to create, right? It's just the whole driving on the roads thing is a bit of an issue, of course, still. But yeah, it's an interesting thought. Gregory, you wanted to add the last thing to it before we round off the space?
Yeah, well, Dominic, I agree with Dominic as soon as what they said about it. I just wanna highlight one thing is like actually if we have more robot that's bullish for crypto. we started with just mentioning CBDC, and then there was the digital euro questionnaire or comment section. Very interesting. The German I don't know, was it commercial association. They had a comment that actually they do not need CBDC. They need a digital currency for robots. So if you have more and more robots and they are communicating, they will do not just communication but transactions as well. And for that, crypto is the ideal way of transaction. Just for
Yeah, interesting thought as well. Very interesting, Dominic. What do you think?
Yeah, I do. I think I would agree, because the use cases are kind of they're kind of visible already, right? But I think for this to actually take place, we would still need more more ease of use in a certain way, right? We still to be able to onboard people in a much easier way. A lot has been happening over the last couple of years, right? Don't get me wrong. If I think back at into 2021 or something, it was much more complicated. Everything around how to get onboard to crypto, how to adopt it, how to start people using it, and some stuff like that. And now think about Phantom being what spot number 2 and the most downloaded apps in the US last year, or at least in Q4 or something. A lot has been happening, but we're still not yet there. My mom couldn't use it. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. We're not there yet, but it's going faster and faster.
100%.
All right, guys. Well, with that said, we're at the end of the show here on Paul's Penthouse. I want to do a massive shout out to Dominic, Gregory, and SMS. Thank you so much for being here today, for joining us on the panel, and Dominic for co-hosting, of course. And to everyone in the audience, I hope you had a fun time. I hope you learned something. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I see a lot of the familiar faces back in the audience. Always good to see you guys. Also some new faces, so welcome. We will be back here on Paul's Penthouse next week, Wednesday, with another AI Spotlight, where we talk with a project that's developing something in the AI niche combined with crypto. We hope you all will be there, so you will learn something new again. And for now, I want to wish everyone a wonderful weekend ahead, and we see each other next week. Thank you so much, guys. Have a good one.
Take care, guys.
Have a good one. Thanks for having me.